Undercover CEO, millionaire, found a security guard, studying by flashlight, in the parking lot. What happened next changed his life. The underground parking garage was cold and silent, wrapped in the stillness of a late autumn night. Fluorescent lights buzzed dimly overhead, casting long shadows on the rows of concrete columns. It was nearly midnight, long past the time when most employees had gone home. The garage was empty, except for the quiet hum of a few parked cars and the faint echo of approaching footsteps. Charlotte Hayes walked with slow, steady strides. Her usual heels had been traded for flats. Her white blouse, once crisp in the morning, now hung loose outside her black slacks, its edges wrinkled and soft from the day's wear. The top two buttons were undone. A gray trench coat fell open as she moved, revealing her unkempt appearance, rare for someone known in the business world for flawless presentation. Her long blonde hair was tucked behind her ears, slightly tousled from the long hours she had spent in a private strategy meeting on the top floor. She looked less like a multi-millionaire CEO, more like a tired junior analyst, and that was intentional. This branch of her company, Hayes Group, was one of the most troubled in the Eastern Division. She had arrived without an entourage, using only her first name, wanting to observe without titles or fear altering what people showed her. And tonight, after hours of tense meetings and reports that blurred together, she just wanted to leave quietly. But something stopped her. A flicker of dim light danced across the far wall of the garage, soft and irregular, almost like candlelight. It was coming from the corner, near the security booth. Charlotte frowned slightly and turned toward it. As she drew closer, the light became clearer. A flashlight, old and flickering, propped up awkwardly against a thermos. Its narrow beam illuminated a battered table and a man hunched over a thick paperback book, his brow furrowed in concentration. He did not notice her at first. He was in his late 20s, with dark hair and a quiet presence. His Navy security jacket was unzipped, revealing a simple hoodie beneath. His face was calm, focused. He moved with care, flipping pages, taking notes in a composition notebook that had clearly seen better days. A pair of earbuds dangled unused around his neck. Charlotte stopped a few steps away, arms crossed loosely over her chest. The quiet in the garage was almost sacred. "You always work under that light?" she asked gently. The man startled, his hand moving instinctively toward the flashlight. He squinted at her, then quickly stood, straightening up. "I didn't hear you. Sorry. Yes, ma'am, I was just studying." Charlotte raised a brow, nodding toward the book. "Looks like more than just studying. That's advanced C++. The man looked at the cover, then back at her. "Yeah, I'm trying to finish a certification. I used to be in school, but life got in the way." He said it without bitterness, just a quiet, factual tone. "I'm Charlotte," she said simply, offering no title. "Caleb," he replied, nodding. "Caleb Miller." She glanced again at the flashlight. "That thing's barely hanging on." He smiled faintly. "I make it work." Charlotte hesitated. Something about him reminded her of someone. Her father, maybe. He used to work 12-hour days at a body shop, then come home and study engineering textbooks late into the night. Her mother would bring him coffee, and she, as a child, would sneak down the stairs to watch him work under the kitchen lamp. "I know it's none of my business," she said quietly, "but what's driving you to do this?" He shrugged slightly. "My sister. She's about to start college. I promised her I'd go back too. Do something better. Something real." Charlotte nodded, her throat tightening just a little. She stepped forward, placing something gently on the edge of his table, a protein bar from her coat pocket, and then, after rummaging in her bag, a small worn book, Understanding Algorithms, a practical guide. She didn't say anything about them. Caleb looked down, startled. "You don't have to." "I know," she interrupted softly. "But I want to." He met her gaze. For a moment, neither spoke. Charlotte gave a half smile, then turned to go. As she reached her car, she called back over her shoulder, her voice low but certain. "Not everyone sees value where it is right now, but that doesn't mean it's not there." She opened her car door, stepped inside and drove off, leaving behind the quiet hum of fluorescent lights, and a man staring down at a book left by someone who saw something more in him than a uniform. It started with a few casual detours. After that first night, Charlotte began parking in the same spot more frequently, far from the elevators, closer to the corner booth where Caleb sat. She had no need to. Her assigned executive space was closer. But something pulled her there. Curiosity, perhaps. Or maybe it was the quiet presence of someone who seemed untouched by the world of titles and status. She continued wearing the same simple outfit, blouse, slacks, flats. No one in the building suspected she was the CEO. They only saw another tired contractor burning the candle at both ends. Each night after her meetings, she passed by Caleb's post, sometimes offering a short greeting, sometimes staying a while. Over time, the silences between them softened into conversations. He spoke sparingly, but when he did, it was with thoughtfulness that caught her off guard. One evening, seated on a folding chair beside his desk, she noticed the small photo taped inside his notebook. A teenage girl in a graduation gown, holding a scholarship award. "My sister," Caleb said, noticing her glance. "Lily. She's starting college in a few months. First in our family. She looks proud," Charlotte said, smiling. "She is. She worked for it. I'm just trying to catch up." He didn't elaborate, but Charlotte didn't need him to. In the nights that followed, they talked about books, programming logic, the best kind of instant coffee to survive long shifts. Charlotte found herself laughing, real laughter, not the polite kind she used in boardrooms. With him, she didn't have to be careful with every word. He listened. Not because of who she was, but because he wanted to understand. Then came the rain. It had been a brutal Tuesday. Charlotte left the building late, her shoulders tense, her hair pulled messily into a low ponytail. As she stepped into the garage, the distant sound of thunder rolled through the concrete. Halfway to her car, the rain started, cold and sharp, blowing in from the open entryway. Caleb appeared from his booth, walking swiftly toward her. Before she could speak, he shrugged off his security jacket and placed it over her shoulders. It was still warm, the fabric heavy and worn. "You'll catch something," he said simply. "I'm used to the rain. You're not." Charlotte was stunned for a moment, clutching the jacket tightly. It smelled faintly of soap and coffee. She looked at him, unsure how to respond. "Thank you," she said softly. He only nodded, walking back to his desk without another word. Later that night, Charlotte sat in her car, still wrapped in the jacket. The gesture echoed louder than any corporate partnership she had ever signed. Another night, she witnessed something that lingered even longer in her memory. She had returned late again, trying to clear her mind. As she rounded the curve into the far lot, her headlights caught a delivery truck stopped awkwardly near the wrong level. A tired-looking driver stood beside it, phone in hand, clearly frustrated. Caleb was already there. He wasn't on duty for deliveries. It wasn't his job. But he was gently explaining the building map, pointing toward the correct loading dock. Within minutes, he was walking the driver across the garage himself, flashlight in hand. Patient and calm. Charlotte watched from a distance. She didn't interrupt. When Caleb returned to his desk, soaked slightly from the damp air, he picked up his book as if nothing had happened. Charlotte leaned against the hood of her car, arms folded. In her mind, a quiet realization formed. He helps people not for credit, not for reward, just because it is right. She smiled to herself, then stepped into her car, the warmth of the security jacket still folded neatly in the passenger seat beside her. The idea came to Charlotte on a quiet Wednesday evening, just as she watched Caleb carefully pack up his worn-out programming book, with the same precision she had once seen her father use to clean his tools after a long day in the garage. She had been observing Caleb long enough to know two things. He never asked for help, and he never took shortcuts, which made what she was about to do feel slightly manipulative, but also necessary. The laptop she carried was old, not broken, but sluggish and temperamental. The IT department had long given up on it. To anyone else, It would have been considered a throwaway device, but not to someone like Caleb. When she walked up to his desk, he was in the middle of reviewing syntax exercises, his eyes flicking between lines of code on a printout and notes scrawled in the margins. "I have a favor to ask," Charlotte began, setting the laptop down on the edge of his desk. He glanced up, mildly surprised. "Yeah, it's kind of a mess," she said. "Keeps freezing. Blue screens sometimes. I was going to take it to a shop, but figured you might like the challenge. No pressure." Caleb closed his book slowly. "I don't have the tools," he said after a beat. "No bench, no parts. Just the basics?" Charlotte shrugged. "If you don't have time, no worries." She started to turn, but he stopped her. "I didn't say no," he said. "Just might take a while." A smile ghosted across her lips. "Take all the time you need." He took the machine that night, tucking it under one arm like it was something fragile. Back at home, Caleb stayed up later than usual. The kitchen table became his makeshift lab. He disassembled the casing with a cheap screwdriver set and a steady hand. Dust caked the fans. RAM was mismatched. Software bloated. But it was a puzzle, and puzzles gave him peace. He worked quietly, only stopping when Lily came in, with sleepy eyes and a blanket to drape over his shoulders. "You're doing that for her?" she asked. Caleb nodded once. "She's smart and kind. Are you falling for her?" Lily teased gently. He gave her a look. "She's way out of my league." "Maybe she doesn't believe in leagues," Lily said, yawning as she wandered back to bed. By the third day, Caleb had not only fixed the booting issue, he had optimized the system's speed, removed outdated bloatware, and even installed new drivers manually. He ran benchmarks 3 times, just to be sure. The machine purred like new. That evening, he waited until she arrived, placing the laptop on her desk before she even asked. "Runs smoother now," he said, almost too casually. "Did what I could." Charlotte opened the device. It powered on immediately. No lags, no strange flickers. "You rebuilt the operating system?" she asked, surprised. "I streamlined it," he replied. "Kept the essentials, cut the fluff." She blinked. "How long did it take you?" He shrugged. 3 nights. It was worth the learning." Charlotte paused. She looked at the machine, then at the man in front of her. The same man who had once told her he never had the luxury of finishing what he started. And yet here he was, rebuilding something no one else had cared to salvage. Her chest ached with something quiet and fierce. She wanted to say something. How impressed she was, how rare this kind of perseverance had become, but all she managed was a soft, "Thank you." Caleb smiled. Glad it helped. What he did not know, could not know, was that laptop had been the test, a silent assessment, and he had passed with a kind of quiet excellence that could not be taught in school or measured in degrees. Charlotte carried the laptop back to her car that night, but her mind was far from the files it contained. She had come undercover to evaluate talent. What she had found was purpose, and for the first time in a long while, she felt the stirrings of belief. Belief that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't about business anymore. It started with a picture, a blurry, grainy photo taken from a smartphone camera peeking through the top-floor window of the adjacent building. In the frame, Charlotte and Caleb were walking side by side in the underground parking garage, their heads tilted slightly toward each other, mid-conversation. Charlotte was smiling. Caleb, still in uniform, held the door of her car open like he always did. But context was a fragile thing, easy to warp, easier to weaponize. By noon the next day, the photo had been posted anonymously to the company's internal chat board under the caption, "When being nice to the CEO means a promotion?" It spiraled quickly from there. "Security guard aiming high, huh? Ah, must be good at more than night shifts. Yes, sleeping your way up is a real thing." Charlotte first heard about it through a whispered conversation in the hallway. Someone didn't realize she was behind them. Caleb saw it that evening, after his shift started. A co-worker from logistics had pulled up the thread and handed him the phone, eyebrows raised. He scrolled through the comments. Each one was worse than the last. Not just jokes, accusations. cynical, vulgar slants dressed up as humor. At first, he told himself not to care. He had nothing to be ashamed of, but the silence ate at him. He waited that night, waited for Charlotte to come by, like she usually did, to say something. Anything. She came, briefly, but looked distant, distracted. She did not mention the photo. She asked him how his studies were going, then left after only a few minutes. Caleb sat at his post long after she was gone, jaw tight. He pulled out his phone, fingers hovering over a text message. He typed, "I know it's not true, but the silence makes me feel like you don't." He stared at the screen, then deleted it. Instead, he opened his notes app and typed, "Does she even believe in me? Or am I just a feel-good project with a sad backstory?" He closed the app and shoved the phone into his pocket. The next morning, he submitted his resignation. No formal meeting, no confrontation. Just a quiet email with the subject line, "Notice of departure." Across the city, Charlotte sat in her corner office with a presentation open on her screen. A slide titled, "Internal Talent Uplift Initiative," glowed in bold letters. Underneath, a single name, Caleb Miller. She had spent weeks preparing it. Her goal was clear: to introduce Caleb as the first engineer to join the new tech arm of the company, a move to prove that dedication and merit mattered more than degrees or resumes. But the timing felt wrong now. If she moved forward with the announcement, it would look like validation of the rumors, that the job had been handed to him because of personal involvement, not because he earned it. So she waited, and in her waiting, she lost him. The HR team forwarded his resignation that afternoon. She reread the email 3 times. It was polite, professional, no explanation, just a date. A part of her wanted to call him immediately, to explain, to fix it. But another part, the colder, more rational side, told her he needed time. That if he left because of what people said, maybe he was not ready for what she had planned. That night, Charlotte walked to the parking garage alone. His booth was empty, the chair pushed in neatly, the little lamp turned off. She stood there, silent, staring at the worn surface of his desk. In the drawer, she found the book on programming she had once given him, dog-eared and marked with highlights. Tucked between the pages, a single sticky note. It read, "Sometimes silence is louder than any answer." Charlotte held it in her hand, her throat tightening. She had meant to protect him, from rumors, from judgment. She had wanted to give him a clean entrance, one built on merit. But maybe, in trying to shield him, she had instead made him feel invisible. And that, she realized too late, was the worst betrayal of all. It had been 4 days since Caleb resigned. 4 days since Charlotte opened her email to find a polite but hollow resignation. 4 days since the booth in the parking garage stood empty, dark, and far too quiet. On the 5th night, she drove to the only place she thought she might find him, the small walk-up apartment building near the Bronx where she knew he lived. She had passed it once by accident, back when they talked about Lily's scholarship applications. He had pointed at the cracked 3rd-floor window and said, "That's home. Not glamorous, but it works." She parked across the street and climbed the worn concrete stairs, her breath visible in the cold night air. It was Lily who opened the door. The girl looked thinner than Charlotte remembered, her sweater hanging loose on her shoulders. But her eyes, those same sharp, warm eyes Caleb had, widened the moment she saw Charlotte. "Hi," Charlotte said softly. "Is he here?" Lily shook her head. "He's not staying here right now," Charlotte frowned. "Where is he?" There was a long pause. Then Lily stepped aside, motioning Charlotte in. She led her to the small kitchen table, where 2 mugs of half-finished tea sat, one still steaming slightly. "Hans transferred to a different post," Lily said. "He's working nights down at the Brooklyn shipping docks. Security detail." Charlotte blinked. "Why?" Lily shrugged, but her voice was calm, clear. "Because no one knows him there. No whispers, no pity looks, just long hours and heavy boots." Charlotte's throat tightened. "He shouldn't have had to disappear." Lily looked at her, eyes narrowing but not unkindly. "He hates being seen as a charity case, and he thought Maybe you did too. Charlotte closed her eyes for a moment, her voice barely a whisper. I never pitied him. I admired him. I know, Lily replied gently. So does he. Deep down. But he also knows what silence feels like. And when the world started spinning rumors, and you said nothing, he thought that silence meant you agreed. Charlotte opened her eyes. I stayed quiet to protect the launch. I didn't want people to think he only got the job because of you, Lily finished. He already thought that, but he still hoped you'd say something, anything. Charlotte stood slowly. Do you know what shift he works? Lily nodded. Graveyard. Midnight to 6. Charlotte left the apartment without another word. She drove with the windows cracked open despite the cold. Something about the air helped her think. Or maybe it was punishment, a reminder of what she had let happen. The streets blurred past, lights flickering against the windshield as she passed block after block, searching for a way to make things right. She found herself instinctively turning onto the routes they used to drive together when she would drop him off after coffee, or when they accidentally ended up taking the long way home just to keep talking. The Brooklyn docks loomed ahead, a sprawl of rusted containers and warehouses pressed against the waterline. The security station was small, tucked near the east gate, lit only by one weak overhead bulb. An older man in a thick navy jacket stood outside, smoking a cigarette. He raised an eyebrow as she approached. I'm looking for Caleb Miller, Charlotte said, trying not to sound desperate. The man squinted at her through the haze. You a friend? Yes, she answered honestly. I think I might hurt him. I need to talk to him. The man nodded toward the row of metal containers lining the main yard. He's out there. Walks the whole line twice an hour. Never slacks. He took another drag, then added, almost as an afterthought, you know, that kid's got heart. Always takes the worst shifts, swaps with anyone who's got a sick kid or needs the night off. Never asks for anything in return. Charlotte smiled faintly. Yeah, that sounds like him. She turned toward the yard, the crunch of gravel under her heels, the only sound accompanying her. Fog rolled in low along the water, and her breath clouded in front of her face. She did not know what she would say when she found him, but she knew she had to say something, because for the first time in years, she had let someone in, and when he left, he took more than his resignation. He took the piece of her that had begun to believe in second chances. The fog had thickened by the time Charlotte reached the far end of the dockyard. Shadows stretched long between the towering containers, and the only light came from a small LED lantern flickering near one of the security booths. There he was. Caleb sat hunched on a folding chair outside the booth, a thermos by his side, a thick programming manual resting open on his lap. The flashlight lay balanced on a nearby crate, angled perfectly to illuminate the page. It looked almost identical to the first night she met him, except this time, his shoulders were tenser, his posture more guarded, like he had built walls no one could see. Charlotte stopped a few steps away, unsure if he had noticed her. Then she spoke, softly but firmly. I hoped you would still be using that flashlight. Caleb's head lifted. His expression froze. For a long second, they simply looked at each other. Charlotte took a breath. Her voice trembled slightly, but she pushed through. I brought something, she said, holding out a folder wrapped in a plastic sleeve to shield it from the mist. An official contract, junior systems engineer, Hayes Tech Solutions. He didn't reach for it. Not yet. I know it won't change what happened, she continued, and I don't expect it to erase how you felt, but this isn't a gesture. It's a job, a real one. You earned it, before I even knew your last name. Caleb slowly closed his book, setting it down beside him. He studied her face with the same steady gaze she remembered, quiet, unreadable, but intense. Why now? He asked. Because I was wrong, Charlotte admitted. I thought staying silent would protect your name. I thought if I waited until everything was ready, no one would say it was favoritism. No one would accuse you of getting the job because of me. She paused, swallowing the lump in her throat. I wanted the world to respect you as I do. But I forgot something important. Respect starts with honesty. And I failed you there. The wind rustled through the dock. Caleb leaned back slowly in his chair, gaze still fixed on her. "I felt like I was being tested," he said finally. "Like you were watching to see if I cracked. And when the rumors started, and you said nothing, I froze," Charlotte whispered. "I've been betrayed before, Caleb. I've been used by people who smiled to my face. So I built walls. But with you, I didn't want our story to start under a cloud of gossip. I wanted you to walk into that team with your head high." He nodded slowly, as if weighing her words. Then he looked down at the flashlight, the one that had lit so many late nights. "You believed in me," he said quietly, "even when I didn't believe in myself. No one's ever done that." He stepped closer. "I still do." The silence between them was different now. Less about distance, more about weight. The air pulsed with something unspoken. Caleb stood up. He looked at her. Really looked at her. And then gently took the folder from her hand. He didn't open it. Instead, he said, "You once left a book and an energy bar on my desk and said nothing. You had no reason to, but you did it anyway." Charlotte smiled softly. "You remembered." "I remember everything," he said. He reached out, slowly, and took her hand. It was the first time he had ever touched her. His hand was warm, steady. Charlotte's breath caught. "I want this job," he said. "But more than that, I want this to be real. No more pretending, no more roles." Charlotte nodded, her voice barely audible. "No more roles." A container ship in the distance let out a long, low horn, and the moment wrapped itself in that sound, part industrial, part symphonic. Caleb squeezed her hand gently. "You gave me a reason to believe I wasn't just the guy in the booth." Charlotte smiled, blinking away a tear. "And you gave me a reason to believe people can still surprise me." They stood there for a while longer, not rushing, not explaining, just holding on finally, freely. 1 year later, the skyline of Brooklyn glowed beneath a pale winter sun. The streets were dusted with snow, and the steady hum of the city wrapped around the brand-new glass and brick building standing proudly on the corner of a busy intersection. Above its entrance, silver letters caught the light. Rising Steps, Technology and Skills Center. Inside, the atmosphere was alive, laughter echoing from the training rooms, the gentle clack of keyboards, and the low hum of conversations between instructors and students. A row of monitors in the main hall displayed rotating photos, smiling faces, group projects, and snapshots of people holding their first certificates. Caleb Miller stood near the center of it all, wearing a crisp navy blazer over a simple white shirt. His ID badge read, Lead Systems Engineer, Hayes Tech Solutions. Around him, a small group of trainees peppered him with questions about their coding assignments, and he answered each one with patience and encouragement. Just a year ago, he had been the man in the corner booth with a flashlight and a worn-out programming book. Now he was leading a development team at Hayes Tech, overseeing the creation of software designed to train people just like he once was. Workers without degrees, without connections, but with ambition. Across the room, Charlotte Hayes watched him, a quiet smile touching her lips. Her golden hair framed her face in loose waves, and though she still carried herself with the poise of a CEO, there was something warmer in her gaze now. Since Caleb had entered her life, the edges of her world had softened. She still ran one of the largest companies in New York, but she did so with a renewed belief in people's potential and in second chances. They had never hidden their relationship, but neither had they made it a spectacle. It didn't need to be. Everyone could see the way they respected one another, how their conversations carried an ease and trust that spoke louder than any public announcement. Today was the grand opening of Rising Steps, the nonprofit initiative they had built together. The center would provide free training in technology and job skills to people who had faced unemployment, dropped out of school, or simply been overlooked. The classrooms were equipped with the very tools Caleb had once dreamed of having, and the program's first wave of graduates was already making their way into the workforce. Among them was Lily Miller, Caleb's younger sister. Now 19, she wore a smart blazer and jeans, a lanyard around her neck that read Assistant Instructor. She moved between students with an easy confidence, offering tips and encouragement. Her own path had shifted. After receiving a full scholarship funded through Charlotte's philanthropic arm, she was now studying computer science and mentoring others at the center in her spare time. When it was time for the opening ceremony, the crowd gathered in the main hall. Charlotte introduced Caleb, her voice carrying both pride and affection. "This center was built to remind us all," she said, "that potential doesn't vanish just because the world fails to notice it at first. And no one knows that better than the man I'm about to introduce." Caleb stepped to the podium, adjusting the microphone. He glanced out at the audience, trainees, instructors, donors, old friends from the dockyard and the office, and Lily standing near the front. Charlotte's eyes met his, steady and sure. "I used to think I was just a guy who locked doors at night," he began, his voice calm but firm. "But then someone believed in me, enough for me to start believing in myself. That changed everything. And now, I want to pass that belief on to thousands of others." Applause swelled around him, but Caleb's gaze remained on Charlotte. For a moment, the room seemed to shrink to just the two of them. Later, when most of the guests had drifted into tours of the classrooms, Caleb and Charlotte slipped away to the top floor. This was her new office, a warm, sunlit space with a panoramic view of Brooklyn. 3 of the walls were covered with photo panels, each one holding images of people whose lives had been transformed through the program. On the desk sat a small frame, but it was the photo Caleb held in his hands that mattered. In it, a younger version of himself sat in a dim booth, a flashlight balanced over an open book. The edges of the page were worn, his jacket zipped up against the cold. It was the night Charlotte had first spoken to him. He walked over to an empty spot on the wall and pinned the picture there, smoothing the corners with deliberate care. Charlotte came up behind him, resting her hand on his shoulder. "This is just the beginning, Caleb," she said quietly. "We build this together, and we build it for them." He turned, his fingers finding hers, his expression softening. "And for us too." Outside, the first flakes of snow began to drift down. The golden glow of the office lights spilled across the photo wall, casting warm highlights on the image of a man once illuminated only by the beam of a flashlight. Caleb leaned in, and Charlotte met him halfway. Their kiss was unhurried, a quiet sealing of everything they had built, not just the center, but the trust, the respect, and the love that had carried them here. The camera of life would have pulled back then, framing them against a snowy window, the photo wall, and the city beyond. A reminder that sometimes the smallest lights can grow into something bright enough to guide countless others. And that's how a quiet night in a parking lot turned into a lifetime of building dreams, not just for 2 people, but for countless others who once thought they'd been forgotten. If Caleb and Charlotte's journey touched your heart, imagine how many more real and fictional stories can move, inspire, and remind you of the power of belief. Subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories so you'll never miss the next tale that might just change the way you see the world. Because sometimes the smallest light can change everything.